Single dad cowboy bought 18-year-old girl sold by her stepmom. He never expected she'd fall madly in love with him. The midday sun in the Texas sky burned like a judgment. Heat shimmered off the dirt-packed ground, and the dust hung in the air, unmoving, suffocating. The small town's trading post bustled with voices, haggling, horses snorting, and boots thudding on dry earth. And in the center of it all, a girl stood, too still for the commotion around her, too quiet for her age. Emily, 18, her dress hanging in tatters and dust clinging to every inch of her once fine skin, kept her head bowed. Her long brown hair was matted to the side of her face with sweat, her bare arms thin and scratched. She had been standing there since morning, wrists red from being yanked this way and that by the woman who claimed to be her guardian. "She's young, not dumb," the stepmother shouted, waving her arm toward a man passing by. "She can learn. Real pretty, too. Look at that face. Ain't she worth something?" People paused. Some looked. One old man spit tobacco into the dirt. "Pretty enough, but does she work or just cry?" "She ain't said a word," said another. "Maybe she's mute, or worse, defiant." "She's useless is what she is," the stepmother snapped, yanking Emily forward. "That's why I'm letting her go. Just a mouth to feed, and nothing in return." Emily didn't protest. Her hands clenched at her sides, knuckles white, chin low. Her lips were cracked from the sun, but she didn't lick them. She didn't move when someone sneered, "Maybe she's good for lying down, not standing up." Then the stepmother's patience broke. She turned and drove the heel of her boot into Emily's hip. "Do something! Stand straight, smile, at least pretend to be worth buying." The kick sent Emily tumbling into the dust, her shoulder scraping the ground, her cheek striking the rocks. A small puff of dirt lifted where her body landed. She didn't scream. She just winced and pushed herself halfway up on shaking arms. The market paused for a heartbeat, then resumed its buzz. Another girl being sold in the heat, nothing new, until the sound of hooves silenced it again. A tall figure on a bay horse came into view. Jesse Callan sat straight in the saddle, hat casting shadow over his sharp features. His shirt was rolled at the sleeves, arms sun-dark and corded with years of work. He swung off the horse without a word and let the reins drop. He stood still for a moment, looking down at Emily as she sat in the dirt. "How much?" he asked. The stepmother turned, startled. "300. You take her, she's yours. I don't want her back. She eats like a man and works like a mouse." Jesse's eyes flicked up. "That your child?" "No. Step, her mama ran off, God rest her. Girl's been nothing but trouble since." Jesse looked at Emily again. She didn't meet his gaze. Her face was streaked with dust and blood, but she didn't cry. He pulled a small leather pouch from his belt and dropped $3 silver into her palm. "You get what you wanted, now get gone." The stepmother's grin faltered. "You sure?" "I can. I said go." She grabbed the coins and muttered a curse, disappearing into the crowd without a second glance. Jesse squatted beside the girl. "Can you walk?" Emily nodded, slow and stiff. "Then get up." She struggled to her feet, unsteady, her eyes still on the ground. Jesse didn't offer his hand, but when she swayed, he reached a steady arm and caught her elbow. The grip was firm, not rough. "I didn't buy you to rescue you," he said, voice even and hard. "I need hands at the ranch. You'll clean stalls, fetch water, cook when told. I don't need gratitude. I need results." Emily didn't respond. He looked at her again, longer this time. Then, quieter. "You get a roof and meals. That's more than what was waiting for you back there." He turned and swung onto his horse, then held a hand down. She hesitated. "Or stay here. Up to you." She took his hand. His grip, though calloused, was careful. When she settled behind him, he gave no nod, no comfort, just nudged the horse forward and rode away from the market, away from the jeers, the heat, and the woman who had sold her like a mule too old to pull. Emily closed her eyes. She didn't know where they were going, but for the first time in a long while no one was yelling, and that was enough. Emily tried, she really did, but the morning after they arrived at the ranch, She knocked over the pot of cornmeal, then she broke a plate while washing it, her fingers slippery from lye soap and nerves. And when Jesse's boy Sam looked at her with his silent, unreadable eyes, she said too quickly, "Hi, I'm not going to replace anyone," which only made Jesse's shoulders go rigid. That afternoon, she dropped the pail of milk. It was the last straw. Jesse turned from the porch, voice like thunder. "You think this is a princess manor? I hired hands to work, not to sweep up broken dishes behind someone who doesn't know her left from her right." Emily flinched. Her knuckles whitened around the hem of her apron. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Don't be sorry, be useful." He pointed to the barn. "Stalls need cleaning, and do it right. I'll check." She spent the next 4 hours in the stables, the air thick with the stench of manure and hay, her skirt damp with sweat and dirt. The sun dipped low, painting the sky in streaks of fire and ash, and Emily kept working, scrubbing, scooping, trying to keep her hands from shaking. By nightfall, she dragged herself to the water pump, washed her face, and slipped behind the house. There, in the shadow of the well, she curled up, arms wrapped around her knees. She didn't sob, not loudly, just shallow breaths and the occasional hiccup of someone holding everything in for too long. She didn't hear Jesse step outside. He didn't speak, didn't approach. From the edge of the house, partially hidden behind the woodshed, he watched her. There was no moon, just the distant low of a cow and the rhythmic chirping of crickets. Jesse's jaw tightened. After a long moment, he turned and went back inside. The next morning, Emily entered the washroom and paused. On the wooden shelf, there was a fresh bar of lavender soap. Next to it, a folded towel, newer than any of the threadbare cloths she had used before. No note, no explanation. Later that day, as she stepped out of the barn, Jesse held out a pair of well-used but sturdy gloves. "Found these by the fence," he said without looking at her. "Use them if your hands keep blistering." She stared at them for a second too long. "Take them or leave them," he muttered, walking away before she could thank him. He kept barking orders. "Stack that hay tighter. Wipe the counters with vinegar. Stop dragging your feet." But something had shifted. He didn't yell quite as loud, didn't curse when she dropped a spoon, and at dinner he didn't leave the table until she finished eating too. They went to the town market 2 days later. Emily followed a few steps behind, carrying a list he had scrawled on the back of a feed bag. Sam clutched Jesse's free hand, silent but watchful. They were picking up feed when a woman whispered, just loud enough, "Ain't that the girl Jesse brought back? Wonder what she really does in that house." Another man snorted. "Pretty thing like that, she ain't just cooking, that's for sure." Emily stiffened, her face flushing. She turned away quickly, trying to hide behind a stack of crates, but Jesse heard. He turned, not fast, but deliberate. His voice was calm, cold as metal. "She works for me, under my roof. You got a question about her, you come ask me to my face." The man blinked, backed off with a muttered apology. The woman scurried away. Emily stood frozen. Then, slowly, a small smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. Not of triumph, but of disbelief, and something she hadn't felt in a long time, being defended. When they returned home, Jesse didn't say a word about it. That night, as Emily folded the new towel into her chest, placed the gloves neatly beside it, and caught a faint whiff of lavender from her hair, she realized something. He would never say it, but Jesse Callan didn't buy her to hurt her, and maybe, just maybe, he was trying to remember how to care. The boy didn't speak. Emily noticed it on her third morning at the ranch while sweeping out the bedroom Jesse had pointed to. Sam, 6 years old, with a tangle of dark blonde hair and quiet brown eyes, stood in the hallway and watched her. Not a word, not a sound. The moment she turned to smile at him, he darted away like a frightened fawn. She asked Jesse that evening, cautiously, while scrubbing potatoes at the sink, Is he shy?" Jesse, whittling wood by the fireplace, didn't look up. "And don't talk." "Oh," she said, startled. "Since when?" "Since his mama died," Jesse said flatly. Then he changed the subject. "Don't burn the supper." So Emily didn't ask again, but she began to notice the patterns. how Sam would peek around corners when she swept the porch, how he lingered near the barn while she fed the chickens, never close, never near enough to speak, but always there, like a quiet shadow. At night, when the wind blew through the shutters and the fire crackled low, Emily found herself humming soft, low tunes from the mountains where she was born, lullabies her mother used to sing when the nights were long and the wolves howled far off. She sang not to impress, not to be heard. She sang because it soothed the ache in her chest. One evening, sitting on the back steps with a bucket of snapped beans, Emily started to hum again. The moon was rising, silver and slow. Crickets chirped in the tall grass. She didn't notice Sam at first. He sat in the shadows, legs pulled to his chest, arms hugging his knees, watching. Emily paused mid-hum. Sam didn't move, so she began again, this time slower, gentler. She kept her eyes down, peeled another bean. When she finished the song, she reached into her apron and pulled out a small biscuit she had saved from supper, round and warm, wrapped in cloth. She didn't speak, just placed it beside her on the step and slid it a little to the side. Sam stared. After a few moments he crawled forward, took the biscuit without a word, and sat back where he was. Emily smiled, though she didn't let him see. From the shadows near the barn, Jesse stood leaning against a post, arms crossed. He had come looking for a spare bridle and stayed when he heard the singing. He said nothing, just watched. And then he went inside. The next morning, Emily found a folded piece of paper on the kitchen table. The drawing was done in charcoal pencil, rough but careful. 3 stick figures, a tall man with a hat, a small boy, a girl with long hair. Underneath were 3 names written in clumsy block letters: Daddy, Sam, Emily. She stared at the paper for a long time, her hands still dusted with flour. Then she looked up. Jesse had just come in from the barn, brushing hay off his sleeves. He saw the drawing in her hands and his eyes narrowed just a bit. "He left that for you," Jesse said, voice low. Emily swallowed. "Help remember my name." "He sees more than you think," Jesse murmured. He walked past her, grabbed a cup from the shelf, and paused. His eyes landed on the drawing again, and for the briefest second his jaw tightened. Then he exhaled, long and slow, and walked out onto the porch without another word. Emily tucked the drawing into the pocket of her apron. Her hands were shaking, but for the first time since arriving at this strange house, with this quiet boy and that hard-eyed man, she didn't feel afraid. She felt like she was being seen, and maybe, just maybe, accepted. The market in Oak Ridge was small, just a cluster of stalls along the dusty main road, but it was noisy and alive, with chickens squawking, horses tied to posts, and townsfolk shouting over prices. Emily had been there only twice since arriving at the ranch, always with Jesse or Mara, the housekeeper. But that morning Jesse had sent her alone. "Take the cart," he'd said. "Get onions, salt, and flour. Be back before midday." Emily had nodded and set off. She liked being useful. She liked being trusted. And despite the stares she always felt in town, she kept her head high. Until a hand brushed her arm, she turned quickly and found herself face to face with a grizzled man in a sweat-stained hat, his teeth yellow and his eyes sharp with mockery. "Well, well," he said, stepping too close. "Ain't you the girl Jesse Callan brought home? Heard he likes 'em young. You sleepin' warm now, darlin'?" Emily stepped back, her heart thudding. "Excuse me," he chuckled low. "What's he got you doing? Cleaning the house or warming the bed?" And then suddenly he was gone, shoved hard against the wall of the butcher's stall. A loud thud echoed, and silence rippled through the market. Jesse stood over him, face cold as steel, one hand gripping the man's shirt. "She works under my roof," Jesse said, voice low but clear. "You got filth in your mouth, keep it away from her. Next time you won't be getting up." The man stammered. I didn't mean..." "Nothing, just a joke," Jesse dropped him. "Then learn a better sense of humor." He turned to Emily, who was frozen by the vegetable stand, holding a head of lettuce so tight it was wilting. You all right?" She nodded quickly, too fast. "I'm fine." But she wasn't. Not entirely. Because no one had ever said those words for her before. No one had ever stood in front of her like that, drawn a line and dared the world to cross it. She paid for the produce and walked the rest of the market in silence. Jesse said nothing more as they headed home. He rode beside the cart on horseback, hat low over his brow. Emily didn't try to speak. She didn't need to. That night, after the dishes were washed and Sam had gone to bed, Jesse lingered on the porch. Emily stepped out, folding a cloth napkin, and saw him watching the moon rise over the hills. "You shouldn't worry about what folks say," he said suddenly. Emily blinked. "I don't. They talk. Always do. But you stay straight, keep your hands clean. That's all that matters." She nodded, unsure what else to say. Her throat felt tight. Then, after a long pause, Jesse said something different. "Emily?" It was the first time he'd said her name out loud. Not girl, not you, not barked from across a room, just spoken. Soft, like it mattered. "Yes? That chicken stew you made yesterday, do it again tomorrow. Had flavor." Emily's lips curved, almost despite herself. "All right." He didn't smile, but his eyes rested on her a moment longer before he turned and went back inside. Emily stood alone under the stars, her heart beating strangely. There were no flowers, no gifts, no kind declarations. Just the warmth of her name in his voice, and the knowledge that for once in her life, she wasn't invisible. And somehow, that felt like more than enough. The night was thick with the scent of hay and sweat, the wind whispering through the open barn slats. Emily had stayed late in the stables, brushing down the horses by lantern light. It had become a kind of refuge, the quiet, the rhythm, the way no one asked her to explain herself. She was just about to leave when she heard Jesse's voice. Not loud, not angry, just quiet. He was in the back stall with Midnight, the black mare he favored, brushing slow, even strokes down her flank. "I thought I was strong," he murmured. "Thought I could carry everything on my own. Then she died and I realized how stupid I'd been." Emily stood still, breath shallow. "She was soft," Jesse said, his voice hoarse. "Too soft for this place. I should have taken her to town earlier. She said the baby felt wrong. I told her she was just tired. I thought I knew better." He chuckled, bitter. "She died an hour after Sam was born. I buried her under that oak by the fence. The boy ain't said a word since." Emily didn't step forward, didn't speak. She just stood there, letting the words hang between them like smoke. Jesse exhaled. Long, tired. Then he turned and saw her. He didn't flinch, didn't pretend he hadn't been speaking. He just looked at her across the stable's dim light. "You came for the brushes?" he asked. She nodded. "Yes." He gave a single grunt and turned back to the mare. Emily walked away, heart thudding with something heavy and tender. The next morning she found Sam sitting on the porch steps, knees tucked to his chest, a small wooden box in his lap. He didn't look up as she approached, but when she sat beside him, he opened the box without a word and held it out. Inside was a hairbrush. Simple, old, polished smooth from years of use. Sam's voice, small and scratchy, startled her. "Mama's." Emily's eyes welled. "Thank you," she whispered. Sam didn't smile, but he didn't look away either. That night, as she brushed her hair by lantern light, Emily stared at the brush in her hands. It was more than wood and bristles. It was trust, memory, a piece of the family she was starting to feel tethered to. Later, Jesse came into the kitchen to pour himself coffee, though it was already past supper. He paused when he saw the brush beside her plate. "He gave you that?" Emily nodded, said it was his mama's. Jesse didn't speak right away. Then, quietly, he said, "She used to fume while brushing her hair. That boy remembers everything." Emily placed the brush back into the box reverently. "I'll keep it safe." Jesse's eyes met hers. There was something softer in them tonight. "I don't think I've said this before," he murmured, "but I don't see you as lost anymore. She blinked. He looked down at his coffee, then back at her. "You belong here. I see it in Sam. I see it in the way you move around this house. You make it not so quiet." Emily swallowed, hard. Jesse took a sip of coffee, then turned toward the door. But before he left, he added, "I don't think I was ready for anyone new. But now, I don't think I'd like it here without you." And with that, he stepped out onto the porch, the screen door creaking behind him. Emily sat alone in the golden light of the lantern, the old brush beside her, her heart full of things she didn't yet have words for. But one truth stood clear. She was no longer just surviving. She was slowly being seen, and maybe even needed. The morning Jesse left, the sky was a deep, cloudless blue. He hitched up the wagon with 3 of his best mares, bound for the next town over, where a buyer was waiting. It would take 2 days, maybe 3, depending on the weather. Before leaving, he turned to Emily on the porch. "Sam's been feeling warm," he said. "Keep an eye on him. Don't let him run too hard. He'll try to hide it." Emily nodded. "I'll watch him close." Jesse looked down at Sam, crouched near the chicken coop with a stick in his hand. "You listen to her, boy, and stay off the fences." Sam didn't speak, but he nodded. Jesse tipped his hat once, then climbed into the wagon and rode off, the creak of wood and the clop of hooves fading down the road. By midday, Sam had grown flushed. His little hands felt too hot, his face pale under the sun. Emily made him sit on the porch in the shade while she brewed a tea of dried willow bark and mint from the herb shelf in the kitchen. "You just rest," she said gently, brushing damp hair from his forehead. "I'll get more wood for the stove and we'll cool you down proper." Sam nodded again and leaned back in the rocking chair. Emily hurried out to the back shed, arms full of kindling. She was gone 5 minutes, maybe 7. When she returned, Sam was on the floor. He had tried to reach the jar of honey on the high shelf in the kitchen. A chair was tipped sideways and Sam lay beside it, his arm curled to his chest, whimpering. "Sam!" she cried, dropping the kindling. Blood dripped from a shallow gash on his elbow, and his shirt sleeve was torn. Emily wrapped his arm as best she could with clean cloth, pressing the edges of the cut. "You shouldn't have gotten up, honey. Why didn't you wait for me?" Sam only whimpered. She cleaned the cut, held him close, kept cool water on his brow, but guilt sat heavy in her chest like a stone. By the time Jesse returned late the next day, dust trailing behind his wagon, the boy was resting on the couch with his arm wrapped tight and a fever fading. But Jesse's face darkened the moment he stepped through the door and saw the cloth bandage. "What happened?" Emily rose from the floor. "He had a fever. I was making tea and stepped out to get more firewood, just for a few minutes. He tried to get something and fell." Jesse crossed the room in 3 long strides. "You left him alone?" "I didn't think he'd move. He promised to sit." "Damn it, Emily!" he shouted, voice sharp enough to make her flinch. "I left him with you." "I know," she said, hands raised slightly. "I didn't mean. He could have hit his head. He could have broken his neck. What if I'd come back to find him?" Jesse stopped himself, but his face said everything he couldn't. Emily's voice shook. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean for I already lost someone," he snapped, voice raw. "I will not lose my boy, not because I trusted the wrong person." Emily stepped back, her lips parted, breath caught. Jesse ran a hand through his hair, turned away, then turned back, still boiling. "Pack your things," he said coldly. "You'll leave in the morning." She stared at him. "But I—" "You heard me." His voice was lower now, but not softer. Emily nodded, slowly. She didn't cry, not yet. That came later, when she packed her things in the dark, moving in silence, trying not to wake Sam. She left the hairbrush he had given her on his little nightstand. By dawn she would be gone, and the house would be quiet again, but not in the way it had been before. Emily left before the first hint of dawn lit the Texas sky. The house was still in shadow, its corners tucked in sleep, the world hushed beneath a heavy silence. She moved quietly, careful not to wake the boy down the hall. Her footsteps were soft, barefoot on the wooden floor, her breath tight and shallow. She packed only what she had brought with her months ago: 2 worn dresses, faded but clean, a pair of scuffed shoes with soles nearly worn through, a small comb with 2 missing teeth, and a bundle of thread she had once thought she would use to mend tears, fix buttons, start anew. She folded each item with trembling hands, not from fear, but from something deeper, heavier: regret, grief. On the hallway table she laid down a single offering, a handkerchief, plain, white cotton, the edges neatly hemmed and embroidered with one name in tiny, careful stitches: Sam. Her throat tightened as she smoothed it flat. Then she turned, just once. Down the narrow hall, the door to Sam's room remained slightly ajar. The faint shape of his small figure under the quilt was just visible. She took 1 step forward, then stopped. If she walked in now, if she saw his face, she would not leave. And Jessie had made it clear. So she stepped back, pulled on her shawl, and slipped out the front door. The screen creaked faintly behind her, then shut with a final, muffled thud. By the time Jessie woke, the morning sun was just brushing the tops of the trees. He expected to hear the clatter of pans in the kitchen, the soft hum of a tune from the back porch, but the air was still, the rooms too quiet. He walked into the kitchen and stopped. The boots by the door, hers, were gone. His eyes moved to the hallway table, empty except for 1 folded piece of cloth. He picked it up, turned it over. His son's name stared back at him in small, perfect letters. His chest tightened. He found Sam sitting cross-legged on the floor of his room, dressed but unmoving, holding a piece of crumpled paper like it was the last soft thing in the world. Jessie crouched beside him, voice low. "You seen her go?" Sam didn't speak. His lips were pressed so tight together they were almost white. His eyes rimmed red, but no tears fell. Jessie reached out gently, took the paper. It was a drawing, simple, made in charcoal. A man with a wide hat, a boy with a crooked smile, and a girl with long hair, all standing in front of the stable, holding hands. Emily. Jessie's jaw worked, clenched, then loosened again. "I told her to go," he muttered, more to himself than to the child. "I just didn't think she actually would." Sam said nothing, just hugged his knees tighter. That night, Jessie sat by the fire, the drawing resting in his lap. He did not eat, did not sleep. The house felt emptier than it ever had, not because someone was gone, but because the wrong person had left. By morning, the fire had burned down to coals. He stood, folded the drawing carefully, and slipped it inside his coat. He didn't bother with a full breakfast, didn't check the barn. He saddled his horse, slung his bag over the back, and mounted without a word. Sam stood on the porch in his socks, watching. Jessie tipped his hat low, eyes set to the horizon. It was the first time he'd ever left the ranch without hauling livestock, without making a trade or fixing a fence. This ride wasn't for business. It was for her. The old chapel stood alone on the edge of the hills, half swallowed by wild grass and time. Its windows were broken, the doors hung crooked on rusted hinges, and ivy crawled up its wooden sides like a memory that refused to die. But Jessie knew she would be there. It was where his late wife used to sit on Sunday mornings, hands folded, even when there was no congregation. Just her and the silence. Emily had once passed it on a ride and asked about it. He remembered how gently she'd spoken, like she already understood the comfort of forgotten places. He tied his horse to a fence post and stepped through the crooked gate. Inside, the air smelled of dust and old wood. Light spilled through broken panes in thin gold stripes. And there she was. Emily sat in the first pew, her back straight, her hands clasped in her lap. She didn't turn as he entered, but she knew. "I thought maybe you'd come here," Jessie said softly. She didn't move. "I didn't know where else to go," she whispered. He stepped closer, boots slow against the creaking floor. "It's not your fault, Emily. What happened with Sam, he's a boy. Accidents happen." She turned then, eyes rimmed red but dry. "You told me to leave." "I did," he said, voice thick. Because I was scared. Because I already lost one person I couldn't save, and I thought if I let myself care again, if I let myself need someone, I'd lose them too. Emily blinked, silent. I didn't trust myself, he continued, but more than that, I didn't trust you, and I should have. He came to stand before her, then slowly lowered himself to one knee. I've said a lot of hard things, and not enough good ones. So let me say this. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small silver ring. It was simple, worn smooth by time. This belonged to my mama. She wore it until the day she died. I kept it because I didn't know what love was supposed to look like after everything, but now, he looked up at her. I bought you once, and that's something I'll carry. But I don't want to own you. I want to keep you. If you'll let me. Not because I need a cook, or a caretaker, or even a mother for Sam, though God knows he loves you. I want you because you've become part of this house, part of us. Emily stared at him, the air between them filled with dust and light. I'm not the same girl you bought, she said softly. I know, he replied. You're the woman I fell in love with. For a moment, neither moved. Then Emily reached out, placed her hand in his. The old church bell, though cracked, swung faintly in the breeze outside. Its rusty chime echoed once across the hills, low, imperfect, but clear. Emily nodded. I'll stay. Jessup closed his eyes for a moment, like a weight had been lifted he didn't realize he'd carried. He slid the ring onto her finger, too big, but perfect nonetheless. He rose and she rose with him. Outside, the wind carried the scent of dry grass and rain, and inside that broken chapel, something new had taken root. Soft, strong, and unshakably real. They walked out, hand in hand, toward the horse, toward the road, toward the place that would never be just a ranch again. It would be a home. Thank you for staying with us through this journey of heartbreak, healing, and hope. Emily was once sold as nothing more than a burden, but through quiet strength, kindness, and the courage to love again, she became something far more powerful, the heart of a home. And Jesse, a man who had sworn off second chances, learned that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is to open your door one more time. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that love isn't loud, but lasting, please give us a like, leave a comment with your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe to Soul-Stirring Stories for more tales that touch the heart and stay with you long after the last word. Until next time, stay kind and keep believing in second chances.